Alien games have been a bit of a mixed bag over the years, but a lesser known title known as Infestation manages to capture the essence of the films and in all honesty presents one of the finer games to ever come out of the franchise. It all takes place from a side-scrolling perspective and lends a lot from the likes of Metroid, which sees the player exploring each environment and overcoming enemies with a host of diverse weapons and abilities that can be upgraded throughout the adventure. But what cements Alien Infestation as one of the best in the franchise has to be the unforgettable boss encounters, which are truly a sight to behold. Visually, it's stunning, and squaring off against these enemies is a real highlight of the experience and a true test of the player's skill. Alien Infestation deserved a lot more recognition than it got when it released, so if this one passed you by back in the day, there has never been a better time than now to pick it up. Drone Tactics follows several young children who stumble across a pair of bugs. The bugs tell the children of their home world that is under threat by a group known as the Black Swarm, who use these bugs for battle. The children agree to help them and to ultimately stop the group and bring an end to their occupation of the world. Now the premise is pretty insane and totally forgettable, but it does set the stage for what Drone Tactics gets right, and that's its gameplay. The action takes place on a grid-based arena, with engagements being depicted in higher fidelity on the top screen of the DS. It shares a lot of similarities with the likes of Advance Wars, with several types of bugs being available to the player in which to use in battle. Now each of them has a set amount of movement, as well as distinct attributes that make it either weak or effective against the differing enemy types. And to top this off, there is a huge variety of maps and a generous single player campaign that will keep you busy for hours on end. Soul Bubbles is a rather unique experience on the Nintendo DS. It involves the player assuming the role of a sort of shepherd who helps the souls of deceased animals reach the afterlife. It's all broken up into levels which are presented as mazes and task the player with acquiring the lost souls scattered throughout and moving to the end of each in order to advance through the adventure. But what adds a huge amount of difficulty is the fact in order to transfer these souls, they need to be placed in bubbles. The bubbles in which the souls are placed are extremely fragile and can burst upon contact with surfaces, and if this happens, the player has a few seconds to trap the soul again before it is lost entirely. All of this is achieved through utilizing the handheld stylus and offers a really intuitive way in which to interact with the world. At first it can be quite tricky to get used to the unique setup, but it soon becomes second nature and propels Soul Bubbles into a must-play experience on the DS. Starting out life on the Super Nintendo, Front Mission has seen a wide range of releases over the years. The DS version is essentially a port of the PlayStation version and manages to maintain everything that made it so memorable, as well as at the same time adds in several new features and additional content to help justify its existence. Essentially a turn-based strategic RPG, the player takes control of larger-than-life mechs that can each be fully customized both visually and in terms of abilities, such as a huge variety of weaponry and options when coming to engaging enemies. There are two separate storylines in which to experience, which really helps the replay value of the game, but the standout feature has to be the controls. Due to the unique setup of the Nintendo DS, Front Mission takes full advantage of the stylus interface and makes carrying out battles an absolute breeze. If you're a fan of the genre, Front Mission offers up one of the finest strategy experiences on the DS and is something that should not be passed up. Nights in the Nightmare follows the journey of a revived soul who is trying to reclaim his kingdom as well as his body after an evil force defeats him and occupies his place within the world. As with many tactical RPGs, the player takes units, each with their own class, effectiveness and attributes, into battle and orders them to attack enemies spread throughout the field with various weapons to attain victory. But what differs from most is that there are no enemy or player phases. The action essentially plays out in real time, with both teams being able to move and make decisions before each turn reaching its end. Visually, Nights in the Nightmare looks great on the handheld system. Each character model and environment possesses plenty of detail, as well as the huge variety of magic and special abilities that light up the screen with some incredible effects. If you're a fan of the genre, Nights of the Nightmare should not be missed. Zombie Barbecue is a shooter based on the popular tale of Little Red Riding Hood. It's a pretty strange mix at first and is bound to put off some players due to the premise, but that would be a huge mistake as the game is surprisingly deep and challenging at the same time. Utilising the top and bottom screens of the Nintendo DS, the action is spread across both of them and sees the player dodging incoming attacks and projectiles, whilst volleying back with a whole range of diverse weapons and abilities that help even the odds against the enemies. Character movement is restricted to 7 blocks, which are placed at the bottom of the screen, and at first it seems quite restrictive, but this is partly where most of the challenge in the game lies. With a healthy amount of levels and bosses to overcome, it is incredibly easy to recommend Zombie Barbecue to all owners of the DS. It really is something that should be experienced by everyone. Rondo of Swords is an SRPG that introduces the player to the world of Bravard. 2 warring factions are lobbying for power, and the game puts you at the centre of this conflict. Now, the story is pretty generic to be fair, and doesn't do anything to elevate the experience, but what does is the incredibly addictive gameplay. It takes many cues from the likes of Final Fantasy Tactics, and sees the player recruiting a variety of characters into their ranks in order to utilise them in battle. It introduces a unique take on engaging enemies through the use of the route manoeuvre system that allows players to set a course for their character and attack several enemies at once. If an enemy were to counteract or block an incoming attack, your advancement will ultimately be blocked. Complementing this system is a whole host of abilities and magic that is intricately tied into a job system which dictates the progression of each character within your party. It's pretty flexible and allows you to grow your characters the way in which you want to, lending the experience a tremendous amount of expression and freedom within its gameplay. Although not the best SRPG on the system, it's definitely one that deserves a look. Steel Princess is a puzzling platformer, with the premise of the game being incredibly simple as it tasks you with overcoming a wide selection of levels by figuring out which way to progress in each of them. Now, every level possesses a key and a gate. As the player, you must ultimately locate this key in order to unlock the gate. But what makes things tricky is the location in which this key may be hiding. It could be with an enemy, or inside a box, or many other ingenious places that test the player's patience as well as skill. The princess can host a variety of items such as swords and a lasso that will help you reach higher places, as well as interact with the environment through the use of switches, for example, that can completely alter the playing field once activated. But breaking everything up is the occasional boss encounter that manages to add even more depth to the puzzles and will test even the most proficient of players. Although not the finest puzzling game on the system, it's still one that deserves a look for anyone interested in a challenging yet rewarding experience. Players assume the role of a young girl known as Ellie, who upon acquiring a mysterious bracelet is granted powers and transported to a mysterious island, where she encounters a cute little monster she names Chomp. At the start of the adventure, Ellie possesses basic abilities such as jumping, an energy blast, and a melee attack, but throughout the course of the adventure, the player will stumble upon various orbs placed throughout each level that will grant them new abilities, as well as being able to purchase upgrades through the use of in-game currency that drops once an enemy has been defeated. This aspect also translates to Chomp, who can be upgraded as well and gain the ability to change shape and alter his effectiveness against enemies. Now, the gameplay lends much from the likes of Castlevania and takes place across a huge variety of levels, with several bosses awaiting you at the end, which in all honesty is the real highlight. Monster Tale didn't get half of the recognition it deserves and would make a welcome addition to anyone's collection. Ring of Fates is a prequel to the Nintendo GameCube title Crystal Chronicles. It manages to expand upon the narrative that was introduced in meaningful ways and fleshes out the kingdom, which gives the player more insight into the inner workings of the world. The game is broken up into dungeons that the player must explore and overcome with 3 other party members that are controlled by the AI. Now, the general objective within these dungeons is to collect loot that defeating enemies or locating treasure chests provide. By obtaining these items, it's possible to use magic, spend gil upon armor and weapons, as well as upgrade them using materials, which really forms the main hook of the game. It's all about constantly bettering your abilities as well as that of your equipment, which is bound to satisfy fans of both the genre and Final Fantasy as a whole due to its intricate story. Now, Ring of Fates addresses many of the issues with the GameCube original, so if you were, or weren't for that matter, fond of it, the DS release well deserves a look.